Based on the thumbnail, I want you to guess, is today's video in Detroit, in Durban, South Africa, or in Brazil? Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson here at Active Cell Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
And I'm your co-host, Neil Widener. Today's video comes from Durban, South Africa.
Download the ASP Unlimited app for all the content you love from Active Cell Protection and more with no interference from YouTube. No ads, no age gates, exclusive videos, seminars, classes, and more on iOS, Android, Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, and Android TV. Hit the link in the description or download ASP Unlimited from your app store today. Car pulling in right now, you're gonna see here in a minute, is being driven by a woman. She is in a full burqa, I'm gonna assume a Muslim. Now watch the car that just drove by. That is our car full of carjackers, though nobody knows it yet. And you can see just kind of a normal supermarket parking lot here in South Africa. Now, as she's kind of dilly-dallying and is thinking about getting out of her car, they are gonna come back by. And as she gets out of the car and starts towards the store, they are gonna start bubbling out of the car and threatening her. They grab her purse, they grab her car keys. You saw the woman there that was down at the bottom of the screen. She noped right the heck out of there. You see the lot attendants are like, what? Especially because a third guy jumps out of the front passenger seat. That's, again, it's right-hand drive in South Africa. And then they start stealing her car. You see the guy that has had the woman who is the carjacking victim, she kind of crouches down. He's sat next to her, gets in the back seat of her car, and now our last armed robber, this is really weird to me, our last carjacker, he doesn't get in the car. Instead, he gets on the sidewalk and starts pointing guns around at everybody and waits for the carjacked car to come out of the parking lot and come around to pick him up. He jumps into it and they run off. Thankfully, our victim wasn't physically harmed in this one. I have no information as to whether they ever got her car back though. Carjacking's carjacking. I mean, listen, this stuff happens the world over. Sometimes people ask me like, why do we do videos from the US? Because they're from the US, I'm from the US, you're from the US. But self-defense is a worldwide thing, guys. And guess what? Looks the same as it would have if it was out of Detroit. So let's think about the same lessons for anywhere we live. Just another day in these transitional spaces, Neil. And you know, a couple things here. Number one, this is very normal. Everything that's going on around here, we would expect. I will say that maybe this is an argument to back in parking, though I do think in a supermarket parking lot, people want their trunk facing out so they can load their groceries. But this is, I think, a good reason to pay attention to your world and maybe think about backing into park.
Yeah, I mean, these guys clearly had her picked out from the get-go before she even got into that parking spot. At least from my perspective, that's what it looks like. But I do think a back-in may have given her at least a heads up that something was going on. But again, I mean, you'd have to have those ninja reflexes because, I mean, she was at a major attention deficit because by the time she realized anything was going on, there was a gun in her face.
Also, don't dally sitting in your car. I know people pull into their car and then she's probably getting all her purse ready and all this stuff and sitting in her car and checking her text messages. But the fact of the matter is that as we keep winding the time here is that because she's sitting and she sits for maybe 15 or 20 seconds in her car and waits, that keeps her in the transitional space. And that gives the bad guys time to drive down around, to turn around, and then to have the right opportunity when she gets out of the car. Don't dilly-dally in the car. Now, Neil, I think what you said earlier makes a lot of sense to me. That she gets out of the car, okay, fine, and all of a sudden, dude jumps out of the car, two dudes or eventually, but jumps out with a gun in hand. And unless she's like a SEAL Team 6 operator here who has been like super mad, like, you know, ready for an ambush, which that's not real life, I don't know that there's a whole lot she can do except for just comply.
Yeah, I don't think there's a real counter ambush opportunity here for at least for her, for the victim. Now there might be for some of the other folks, but she's looking at that gun the second. I mean, you can see her take that quick step back. She sees what's going on the second they open the door. And at that point, I think it's too late for her to do much. Maybe she could have just taken off running, but then you're running off into traffic and who knows what's gonna happen there either. So I don't know that I see a ton that she could have done differently.
Yeah, and you gotta orient to the problem, right? And probably by the time, because they get to set the time and the place of the attack, by the time you orient to the problem, oh no, what am I gonna do? Purposeful compliance when you're the intended victim is the way. Now, let's think about the bystanders a little bit here. Look at the bottom of the screen, and you're gonna see this lady grab her purse and nope right out of there. You can see the lot attendants on the left take a little more lackadaisical approach. I will say,
If they were armed and were high responders, they absolutely have some counter ambush opportunities here that our victim just doesn't. And my reminder to you here is you're not under a legal obligation to do that in any capacity. You may feel a moral obligation to do that, but I want you to really talk about that with your family, because if you decide to intervene, you face a non-zero risk to your life. You face a non-zero risk to yourself legally if you make mistakes. And you may feel like you have to, and if you're armed and ready, maybe you can, but a gunfight against 3 armed people, that's spicy.
Yeah, I don't think you want to jump into that unless you are highly trained and ready to do that, or at the very least, you need to think through it before you act. Right now is not the time to make that decision. That decision needs to have been made. A bunch of training needs to have been done. And as I look at this, I see these 2 lot attendants. The one guy, I mean, of course, he's getting the cart back to the cart corral. I don't know if this is security or just security theater is what it looks like more to me. But the chances are that the guys that are in the car, the driver and the passenger in that front seat, have probably already flashed a gun at them. That may have signaled that freeze thing that we see in bystanders a lot of times, in that, okay, I'm not going to do anything. And then as we see that passenger get out of the car, he kind of does that intimidation walk towards them, takes a step, lets them know that he's in charge, and literally he is the man in charge the second he steps out of there. And then he's the cover man at the end of all of this as well. But yeah, there was a great opportunity for a counter ambush from those guys, but clearly they aren't armed, clearly they aren't trained, and clearly they had never really put any thought into it.
Yeah, and clearly our robbers are not afraid of the security and not afraid of the lot attendants for sure. And I don't know if they're security. These could just be lot guys. You know what I mean? They're there to bring carts back in, whatever. I do want to say I love the fact that our bystander at the bottom, she just grabbed her purse and ran. She didn't worry about her groceries. She got herself to safety, got out of the danger zone. Very, very good. And a side thing here, I know a lot of ladies do like to carry their firearms in purses. I generally don't recommend that. This is exactly why. When she was the intended victim, he took her purse away from her very, very quickly. The reason that he took her purse away from her was because that's where her valuables are. He knows that's where her money is. He knows that's where her cell phone is. He knows that's where her checkbook is, where her credit cards are. And so he's going to grab that very, very quickly. And so ladies, when you carry a firearm in your purse, they're going to take that from you if you're the intended victim, and your ability to get your gun out of there is going to be nil. And so I know some people feel like that's the only way they can carry, and I don't want to shame people for the way that they choose to carry, Neil, but in a world where the Filster Enigma exists and you can carry on body, I just really recommend that over something like purse carry.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you, John. I don't want to shame anybody. If that's the only way that you can carry, then I would challenge that belief, and I would challenge that thought, and I would challenge you to go to the range or come to the range and hang out with me. I've had some ladies that I've worked with over the years that, at the very least, we went and timed that. How long does it take to get a gun in a fight from the purse if they leave the purse on you? Now maybe that lady at the bottom, if she has a gun in her purse, she's got a chance there, but it adds about 300% to your draw time to get the gun into the fight, to reach into a bag, find the gun, get it out of whatever safety mechanism you have. Hopefully you've got it in a holster and all of that. It's just not a great solution. And I get that for some folks that they feel like that's the only solution. And maybe for some it is. Again, I'm not shaming anybody, but you need to know what your numbers are. And this video right here is a clear indicator of of one of the reasons why it's a bad idea.
It really is. And so I'd encourage you to try otherwise, right? Go look up the Filster Enigma, links in the description, those things. Now, I do think this is an oddity. This guy kind of like playing the sentry is really weird. And the one thing I would say to this lady is, if you can, get up and get out of the danger zone. Don't just crouch there, because that guy is threatening your life. Run off as hard as you can. And I'm so mad that somebody stole her car. And I hate that in every capacity. She has every right to stop that. And a carjacking can be absolutely defended with deadly force. But she didn't have the capacity to do that. And so the right answer here is to get out of the danger zone. And sometimes, Neil, it's to recognize that you can't win every fight. And sometimes you got to just give it up and live to fight another day.
Yeah, sometimes just surviving the fight is the goal, is the end result we're looking for. And she did that, and she complied, and she survived. And so hats off to her in that. If I could go back and and whisper in her ear during this as she's crouched by that car, I would say, hey, crawl around behind the car. Get something between you and this guy that's still threatening your life. But she didn't really have anything else going on. I'm sure she's in deep shock right now. But at the end of the day, she complied, and that covered her asp.